Welcome to the Ocean Colonies, a post-apocalyptic story. Written by Brian M. Brumbaugh, read by Gwyneth Paltrow. Please like and subscribe to help support me. Let's begin. Chapter 1. The Boy Who Dreamed of Land. Smith Colony, Mid-Pacific Drift Zone, year 518 AGM. The sea had no memory. It didn't remember the continents it drowned, or the cities it swallowed, or the screams of the last men who watched mountains sink beneath the tide. But Theon did, or at least he imagined he did. The boy sat cross-legged at the edge of the Smith Colony's upper deck, scratching charcoal lines onto a sheet of brittle mylar, a salvaged remnant from a long-dead satellite sail. His fingers were black with soot, his hair bleached gold by years of salt and sun. Around him, the world shimmered, a broken halo of steel pontoons, rigged barges, sailcloth canopies, and old cruise liners welded into a clattering, floating city. Behind him, the colony groaned with life, creaking masts, humming stills, and the clang of water drums being hauled up from the filtration vats. But Theon didn't hear it. He was drawing again, drawing what no one else dared to, a jagged ridge, trees with too many branches, a bird with wings outstretched like sails. Beneath it, his childish scrawl read, Northeast Quadrant, near the sunfall line. Theon! He flinched. The drawing slipped from his lap and fluttered across the deck like a wounded gull. Summer stormed over, her braid trailing like a whip behind her. She was soaked to the knees from water duty and furious in that way only mothers could be when fear and love collided. I told you, no more of this nonsense. It's not nonsense, he said, scrambling for the drawing. Elder Gan is a drunk who thinks clouds are ghosts. And you're not listening to me. Summer's hands trembled as she reached for the drawing, then stopped halfway. She stared at it. Theon had drawn the land again, more detailed this time. He'd even etched shadows beneath the trees and sunbeams through a broken tower. It was beautiful, heartbreaking. She knelt beside him. She whispered, brushing a salt crust from his cheek. This world has no land left, just water and rust. That's all we've got. You keep chasing dreams like this, and one day someone's going to call you traitor instead of dreamer. He didn't look at her. He didn't have to. He already knew the story. Everyone did. They were passed down like sacred verses, etched into solar tablets and shouted across waves. World War III, global fires, the final melting of Earth's ice. It came not as a flood, but as a rising hunger. Every inch of coast eaten, every river swallowed, every mountain turned to coral grave. When the waters finally stopped rising, humanity clung to the wreckage. Colonies were lashed together from steel bones and solar skin. Survivors became barterers, raiders, salvagers, and traders. 5 generations later, the world was still floating, still drifting, still hoping. Water was life. Dirt was power, and dreams were dangerous. Later that night, Theon snuck out. Summer had fallen asleep beside their cot in the lower ring, arms curled protectively around the few vegetables they'd grown in a gutter box. He climbed up the sail tower, stepping quietly around the rotating fan blades, and crouched beneath the old radar dome, his secret spot. He reached into the hatch and pulled out a plastic crate. Inside, drawings, maps, old stories carved into battery casings, a faded children's book called What Was the World? He flipped through the pages until he reached his favorite, a field of yellow grass beneath the blue sky. That was where he wanted to go. He didn't know if it was real, but he knew something was. He had dreams, vivid ones, of cliffs and caves and thunder that wasn't made by waves. And last week, a mariner had passed through the colony, trading salted meat for a bag of dirt. He had whispered to Theon before leaving, "There's still land out there, but it doesn't want to be found." Just before dawn, as the clouds gathered and the smell of lightning filled the air, an old woman hobbled out onto the deck, Elder Gan. She watched Theon from a distance, clutching a stick carved from the fin of a great shark. Her eyes were milky with age, but sharp with suspicion. Behind her, on the horizon, a shape moved. Not a colony, not a trader. Something else, large, low, and wrong. She sniffed the wind. "Buccaneers," she rasped. "They're coming." Chapter 2. Salt and Steel, Life on the Colonies. The drift lines, year 518 AGM, The colonies didn't float. They endured. And they did it with salt-stained iron, rusted rivets, and a whole lot of faith in things that barely held together. There were dozens of them scattered across the ocean, each one a testament to desperation turned into resilience. Some were built from cruise ships stripped to the ribs. Others were just rafts stacked with shipping containers, lashed together with kelp cord and braided nylon rope. All of them moved with the currents, drifting slow circles in the planetary gyres like flotsam clinging to memory. But 3 stood out as hubs, the so-called Tri-Ring Coalition, and Smith Colony was the heart. She wasn't the biggest or the strongest, but she had something the others didn't: leadership. The Council of Elders at Smith Colony kept things orderly with rotating roles, enforced bartering systems, and a strict ban on weapons within the inner rings. Freshwater came from rooftop stills, recycled systems, and daily sweat. Every child had a chore. Every adult had a duty. Slackers were given the long float, a tethered dinghy, and a shove toward open water until they reconsidered their commitment. Smith traded fairly, enforced peace, and, most importantly, had enough working solar panels to keep its batteries charged. And that meant radios. If you ever wanted to know what was happening on the sea, you tuned into Ring Com, the common open channel for mariners, colonies, and traders. Theon loved Ring Com. He'd spend hours listening to it crackle. Driftward of Sector 4, current strong, jelly blooms thick, mariner vessel Wishbone requesting trade in medicals. Rumors of raiders sighted west of the graveyard waters. Repeat. Raiders sighted, and sometimes a voice would speak poetry, just a sentence, a line, like this one. The waves remember cities. But they don't grieve them. No one knew who sent those. Some said it was an old AI system still stuck in loop. Others said it was a madman on a homemade raft. Theon thought it was someone like him, someone looking. Southwest of Smith floated Meridia Station, a wilder place built from oil rigs, dredge tankers, and part of a pre-melt military platform. Meridia was tougher, richer, hungrier. They traded in medicine and metal. If you needed antibiotics, circuit boards, or pre-war batteries, you went to Meridia. But you paid dearly. Their leader was called the Copper Queen, a one-eyed woman who wore power like armor and taxed every mariner who passed through her waters. Her motto, gold rusts. Dirt does not. She ran Meridia like a floating fortress, complete with harpoon nests, wave mines, and a fleet of hydro skiffs. But she kept the peace, if only to maintain her market monopoly. The last major colony was the Great Wheel, a bizarre and brilliant monstrosity. It was circular, massive, a floating gyre of salvage built around the skeleton of an old amusement park barge, still had the rusted Ferris wheel rising like a crown in the middle. They didn't trade goods, they traded stories. The people of the wheel were orators, historians, entertainers, and knowledge keepers. They believed the Great Melt was a test, and that storytelling was how humanity would endure it. They had schools, they had choirs, they had theaters made from lifeboats and laughter. But they also had secrets. No one got inside their central tower unless invited, and they never shared their water tech. Threading all of these colonies together were the mariners, wanderers, traders, smugglers, mythmakers. Each one sailed custom-built crafts stitched from the bones of wrecked yachts, motorboats, and surfboards. They were born on the water and lived by a simple creed: trade fair, float free, never follow. Some were solo, some rode in squadrons. All were armed, if not with weapons, then with the knowledge of where to find what others couldn't. Dirk and Ayla had once passed as mariners when they needed to, but true mariners didn't trust easily, and they didn't forgive fakes. The currencies of the sea. Water was obvious. Without it, you died. Still, rigs, rain collectors, and condensation nets were worth more than gold ever had been. But dirt was history. Dirt meant you'd been somewhere, found something. You didn't waste dirt. You didn't plant in it unless you were damn sure you'd live long enough to eat what grew. One handful could buy you a blade, a lover, or a lifetime pass to any colony's green deck. They spoke of them in whispers. 2 ghosts with a sailboat stitched from rags. A man with arms like a harpoon shaft. A woman who could see in the dark waters. They never asked for much. They traded fair, gave away extra, and they always outran trouble. Some thought they were legends. Some thought they were dangerous. Some thought they were mutants. but they all agreed on one thing. If you saw the drifters, your luck was about to change. Elder Gan stood at the top of the north sail, watching the dark shape on the horizon. She didn't say anything, didn't have to. She just pressed her shark fin cane to the deck and muttered one word. Buccaneers, Chapter 3, Ghosts Beneath the Surface. The Drifters. Somewhere west of the burn line, year 518 AGM, the catamaran moved like a phantom. Not fast, not slow, just right. In perfect rhythm with the sea's breath, as if it was part of the ocean, not just riding on top of it. From a distance, it looked like a floating scrapyard, two massive hulls lashed together with riveted beams, nets, solar panel rigs, and wind-catching rags that flapped like sails from a forgotten world. But up close, it was something else entirely. Her name was unspoken, but scrawled faintly across the side of each hull in flaking black paint, Driftborn. Each hull was a 50-foot Beneteau Cyclades sailboat, salvaged from different wrecks, both stripped of luxury and rebuilt for survival. They were linked by custom-welded aluminum framing, thick, weathered girders wrapped in vines and sailcloth to cut the wind. A central deck spanned the two hulls like a rib cage, low-slung and functional, with a pulley crane system, harpoon racks, a tiller crafted from whalebone, and a garden. Yes, a garden. Midship, sunken slightly into the deck, sat a rectangular trough of soil, precious black earth fed by filtered urine and fish meal, shaded by a rigged bamboo awning. Tomatoes, kale, peppers. One stubborn lemon tree. The water-maker was jury-rigged from desalinators, old coffee filters, and a hollowed-out torpedo tube. There was no tech they didn't repurpose, no scrap they didn't recycle, no wave they couldn't ride. But it wasn't just the boat that made legends. It was them. He stood at the prow, shirtless and sun-darkened, arms crossed as the wind knifed across his chest. His muscles looked carved from driftwood, his body lean from effort, not vanity. Tattoos spiraled across his shoulders, symbols in a language long dead. His eyes were steady, his jaw always clenched, and he rarely spoke unless it mattered. Dirk was the blade, the muscle, the storm wall, raised by Uncle Hugh to trust no one but blood. He kept the catamaran silent and clean, knew every creek, every knot, every wave like it was scripture. He could rig a sail blindfolded and hear a leak before it surfaced. Dirk didn't dream of dry land. He didn't believe in myths. He believed in escape and in keeping his sister alive. She dove. That's how she started every morning, head first into the deep, slicing through blue like a torpedo, braid trailing behind her like seaweed caught on a breeze. Where Dirk was stone, Ayla was flame, restless, bright, and impossible to contain. She was 26, radiant, sun-kissed, and moved with the easy grace of someone who had never known walls. Her gills, hidden behind her ears, fluttered slightly in the wind when dry, tiny slits that pulsed when she turned her head too fast. Her eyes were wide and curious. Her laughter could split silence, and her heart was open, always. Ayla didn't want to hide. She wanted connection. She wanted to swim among people, not just fish. She believed in the stories, believed in Theon, even if she hadn't met him yet. They spoke in shorthand, half words, eye twitches, knuckle taps on metal. Raised together in the hull of a wreck by their Uncle Hugh, they had survived by not being seen. Hugh had warned them 100 times. People don't understand what they fear. And what they fear, they kill. When he died, bitten by a blueback eel while diving a flooded archive, they burned his body at sea and didn't say a word for 3 days. But they didn't stop sailing. They couldn't. It was all they knew. That morning, Ayla surfaced with something odd, a sealed canister, pre-melt, marked with a symbol neither recognized, NASA. Dirk opened it carefully with pliers and a file. Inside, ancient maps, sealed in plastic, dry as memory. He stared at the top one, a landmass, jagged, familiar. It read British Columbia. But the most striking thing? A note scribbled in red ink at the top. Elevation 6,942 Hungarian forints, still above water, confirmed 5th General. Ayla looked at Dirk. Dirk said nothing, but his grip tightened on the map. That evening, they spotted a ship, small, limping, half-sunken, a mariner vessel with one sail torn and another dragging in the water. They approached cautiously. Dirk had his harpoon ready. The mariner aboard was alone, coughing up blood, arm wrapped in rags soaked red. He smiled when he saw them. You're real," he rasped. Ayla leaned over the rail. "Who are you?" "Doesn't matter. They're headed to Smith. Looking for a boy. Says he's seen land." Dirk's expression went flat. "Who is?" The mariner shivered. "Buccaneers. Bill's got the scent. He's not human anymore." The man died before he could say more. They buried him at sea that night. Ayla stared west. "Smith Colonies in danger," she said. Dirk nodded slowly. "Then we sail there. Trade quick. No talking, no risks." But Ayla was already pulling up maps, already thinking of Theon, already wondering if the myth had a name. Chapter 4. The Lawless Rise of the Buccaneers. The Black Line Drift, year 518 AGM, they didn't call it a ship. They called it the Devil's Grin. And it was exactly that. Wide, rusty, leering across the waves like a desecrated relic that refused to die. Once, it had been a shrimping trawler, long, narrow, steel-bellied. Now it was something else entirely, covered in scavenged solar panels, barnacle-choked nets, rusted scaffolding, and a forest of bicycle cranks welded into a mechanical monstrosity that extended below the waterline like the legs of a drowned centipede. This was the lair of the Buccaneers. 60 men, no laws, no mercy. The engine ran, sometimes. The solar array powered vital systems during daylight, but when the sun dipped or the clouds took over, they turned to the thing that defined them, the pedal drive. 50 hardened men sat in a sweat-slicked hull chamber, legs strapped into rigs fashioned from bicycle frames, rowing machines, and flywheels. It was hell, pure, salty, screaming muscle hell. But it worked. A system of gear linkages and drive shafts spun a propeller large enough to churn the sea into froth. They called it the pit. No one entered without coming out smaller. The water maker was ancient and cranky, producing just enough to keep the crew alive and the captain in whiskey. And the food? Whatever they took. Fish, rice, colonist rations, salted flesh if the raid was lean. They weren't men. Not anymore, not really. They were sea-burned freaks in patchwork armor. Goggles made from old optics, boots fashioned from tire rubber and fish skin, and weapons that ranged from crude spears to flamethrowers, jury-rigged from aerosol cans and barbecue lighters. Some were ex-soldiers, some were cannibals, all were mad. They worshipped chaos the way others worshipped rain. He was the XO, first mate and quartermaster, a barrel-chested brute with a voice like shredded rope and a face that looked like it lost an argument with a propeller. He kept order with a barbed lash, wore a necklace made of tongues, and led the pit drills like a symphony conductor from hell. Jack hated land myths, called them dream rot, but he followed the captain because he feared him more than the ocean. He wasn't born, he was forged, in diesel fumes and firelight, long ago when the last navies died and the sea forgot its borders. Wild Bill was lean, angular, bones too sharp for flesh. A long coat made from stitched sails billowed around him like a king's mantle. His beard was braided with wire, his eyes cold as bleach. Some said he was once a mariner who snapped. Others said he'd walked out of a sunken prison full of ghosts. No one asked him twice. He spoke in riddles, laughed at silence, and killed with ceremony. He carried no gun, just a harpoon carved from a narwhal tusk and a journal full of maps no one was allowed to read. He believed in one thing, dry land, not as a dream, as a birthright, and now he had a lead. Bill sat cross-legged in the captain's roost, shaded by tattered umbrellas, studying a cracked screen showing the drift maps from intercepted mariner chatter. Theon, a boy with drawings, with knowledge, with instinct. "The map ain't on paper," Bill muttered, smiling with yellowed teeth. "It's in him." Scarjack stepped forward. "Smith Colonies 3 days drift. Then we take it in 2, Bill whispered. "Burn the sails, wake the pit." That night they tested the flame rig on a derelict pontoon colony called Hollow Point, population 14. They gave no warning, just boarded, took what they needed, tested the new flame burners. The screams lit the night. When they were done, they left one child alive, gave her a radio. Tell Smith we're coming, Bill said, and we want the boy. The next day, on the open channels, the message hit ring-com like a wave of acid. Buccaneers moving. Target Smith. Child spotted with topographical drawings. Hostile intent confirmed. Repeat. Confirmed. Some colonies panicked. Some shut off radios. Some prepared. And in the middle of the drift, sailing under stitched rags and shadow, the drifters heard it too. Chapter 5. The gills are seen. Ayla's capture. Smith Colony. 3 days later. The Driftborn sailed in under cover of dusk. The sails, patched together from 100 different cloths, fluttered softly as the twin hulls sliced silently through the water. Colonists gathered on the high decks, whispering, pointing. They'd heard the stories. Some believed them, some didn't. But the moment they saw the massive catamaran rolling in on sunset gold, they knew. The drifters were real, and they'd come bearing dirt. Theon stood in awe. His sketchbook dropped from his hands. From the crowd, Ayla stepped forward, balancing a crate of black soil on one shoulder like it weighed nothing. She grinned at the people of Smith Colony like they were old friends, not strangers armed with spears and suspicion. Dirk followed behind, eyes sharp, posture stiff. He hated dockside crowds. Too many eyes, too many hands, too many risks. The elders approached. "You honor us," said Elder Hura, a tall woman with skin like old parchment and eyes that missed nothing. "What will you take in return?" "Nothing," Ayla said with a shrug. "Maybe some thread, a few root seeds. We've had a good season." The elders looked at each other, stunned. The barter ritual had been broken. Dirk scowled. "We'll take what's fair." While the elders debated, Theon crept forward. "Are you her?" he asked Ayla, voice barely louder than the wind. She knelt. "Her who?" "The one from the drawings, the sea woman." You have the braid?" Ayla smiled. "I don't know about drawings, little fish, but I do know you." Theon's eyes widened. "You do? I saw your map once. A mariner was carrying it. It was covered in salt, almost ruined. But the way you drew the clouds, that's how I knew it was real." The boy lit up. From the shadows, Summer appeared, face pale, hands trembling. "You shouldn't speak to strangers," she warned gently, pulling Theon close, "even if they seem kind." But Ayla wasn't offended. She studied Summer for half a second. Young, lean, tired, protective, strong. A woman who had survived too long and hoped too little. Then something changed. A breeze blew back Ayla's hair, and a man behind her caught sight of what lay beneath. Gasps. Her ears. No, look closer, behind the ears. Slits. Moving. A spear dropped. Someone screamed. Dirk stepped forward instinctively, hand reaching for the harpoon on his back. Ayla froze. "Wait, don't." Too late. A net was thrown, weighted, fast. Dirk was shoved back by guards. Ayla went down hard, tangled and bleeding. Children scattered. Sirens howled from the old radio towers. Klaxons bleated like dying whales. "She's a mutant. They're dangerous. She's infected. Kill it before it spreads." Elder Hura barked commands: "Secure her, isolate her, bring her below." Dirk lunged, caught 3 spears to the shoulder and a face full of fists for his trouble. He didn't go down, not then. But Ayla shouted something. "Run!" And he did, bleeding, furious, and already planning his next move. They bound her in a storage hold once used for grain, now empty except for rusted pipes and broken trust. They didn't torture her, didn't ask questions. They were too afraid to be curious. Elder Hura visited once. "You should have told us what you are." Ayla met her eyes through the bars. "I did. You just didn't listen." Summer found Dirk the next morning, curled behind a rain barrel near the lower launch docks, patching his wounds with fish glue and torn cloth. "I know where they took her," she whispered. "But if you go alone, they'll kill you." Dirk said nothing. "I want to help. You've done enough." Summer's jaw tensed. "That girl saved my boy, and I'm not leaving her to rot because you think everyone is the enemy." Dirk turned to face her, finally. His voice was low, sharp. "You don't know what you're asking." "I do," she said. "I'm asking you not to fail her." He stared, saw the truth in her, the same truth he saw in Ayla. He nodded once. By nightfall, the colony was on edge. Guards posted, radios buzzing, children kept below decks, and out on the horizon, a shape appeared, low, wide, belching black smoke, and flying a tattered flag with a red skull slashed by a harpoon. The Buccaneers had arrived. Chapter 6. Fire on the Water, Chaos and Rescue. Smith Colony, that night. Theon didn't sleep. Summer didn't rest. Dirk didn't wait. And Ayla, she just listened to the water drip through the rusted pipes and counted the seconds between them. She didn't cry, didn't scream, didn't beg. She was done begging. From the outer watchtower, a young scout spotted it first, a low shape on the water, moving faster than wind, its hull groaning with a rhythm no wave could make. "The pit's engaged," he said, voice trembling. "That's no sail. That's them." The elders gathered. Elder Hura clenched her staff. "Sound the horns! Lock the gates!" But it was already too late. By the time the outer ring alarms blared, the Buccaneers had breached the dock nets and slammed full speed into the west platform. Explosions rocked the waterline. Smoke billowed from gas traps and burning diesel. Colonists screamed as the Devil's Grin dropped metal-plated boarding skiffs into the sea, dozens of madmen screaming war songs and swinging machetes. The Buccaneers had come. And they weren't here to trade. Dirk moved like a ghost through the chaos. He'd scouted the route, timed the guards, knew the shift changes by heart. He approached the holding cell from below, diving beneath the ring's submerged struts, rising into the jail through a cracked ballast pipe that no one had dared fix in 10 years. When Ayla saw him crawl out of the shadows, soaked and bleeding, she just grinned. "Took you long enough." Dirk cut the bars with a heated harpoon tip. She rolled through, grabbed his face, and whispered, "Thank you." He almost answered, but then the roof exploded. Wild Bill entered through fire, literally. He stood atop a skiff as it leapt the burning wreckage of the colony's solar bridge, cape flaring behind him like a goddamn opera villain. His crew poured in behind him, Scarjack leading the charge, torch in one hand, hooked blade in the other. "Find the boy!" Bill shouted. "Bring me the dreamer!" Theon was already running. Summer grabbed his wrist and dragged him down a laundry chute into the waste tunnel. It stank of oil, fish, and sewage. But it led away, and that was enough. She didn't know where Dirk and Ayla were, didn't know how this would end. She only knew she'd die before letting them take her son. Dirk and Ayla burst from the jail into madness. Flames licked the sky, people screamed, smoke curled through the rafters. A Buccaneer dropped from the upper deck. Ayla speared him midair with a snapped railing rod. Dirk didn't stop moving. He knew where the Driftborn was docked, and he knew they had minutes, maybe. As they sprinted through the side alleys, they collided with Summer and Theon, covered in soot, shaking, alive. Summer gasped. "You found her!" Theon hugged Ayla without thinking. "I knew you'd escape." Dirk opened his mouth to shout, and a harpoon slammed into the wall beside them. "Go!" They ran, through fire, through blood, through the ring's outer corridor while Buccaneers tore through civilians. Ayla picked up a flamethrower dropped by a dead pirate and turned it on a chasing pack. Screams echoed behind them, followed by the stench of cooked leather and death. Dirk held Theon under one arm, harpooned a man with the other, and kicked open the lock on the emergency launch gate. They spilled onto the dock where the Driftborn floated, slightly scorched but intact. The solar sail had been unfurled. She was ready. They climbed aboard just as Scarjack appeared, roaring curses, blade high. Dirk aimed a water gel explosive at the dock and muttered, "You'll float too." Boom! The dock vanished in a gout of fire and splinters. Scarjack went screaming into the drink. The Driftborn surged forward, pulled by tide and desperation. From the highest flame, Wild Bill stood unmoved. The burning colony lit his pale face. He licked his lips, smiled. "You can run," he said softly. "You always do." Then he turned to his crew. "All pit men on. Rig the harpoons. We hunt at dawn. Later, far from the screaming, far from the blood." Theon stared up at the sail. Summer sobbed quietly. Dirk sat at the helm, silent, hands trembling. And Ayla, she knelt beside her brother and whispered, "We did the right thing." Dirk didn't answer. He just looked west, where dreams and devils waited. Chapter 7. Fugitives on the Foam. The deep blue drift, weeks later. The ocean stretched like a blanket of broken glass, endless, glittering, uncaring. No land in sight, no colonies behind. Only the Driftborn, carving a steady line westward beneath a sun that refused to blink. They were hunted, they were changed, and they were 4 now. Dirk, Ayla, Summer, Theon. A crew forged not by birth or flag, but by fire, blood, and the simple will to survive. For 3 days after the escape, no one spoke much. They were too exhausted, too hungry, too shocked. The Driftborn sails snapped and sang in the wind, but the crew moved like ghosts. Theon sketched. Summer stared. Dirk kept one hand on the helm. Ayla dove. Every morning she vanished into the sea without a word and returned hours later with fish, salvage, and the haunted look of someone still hearing screams in her dreams. On the 4th morning, she dropped a battered chunk of driftwood on the deck, part of a child's toy, melted around the edges. "Smith Colony's gone," she said simply. No one argued. They found rhythm again, as sea people do. Theon helped Ayla in the garden, asking endless questions about how to fertilize soil with fish bones. Summer stitched new sails from emergency tarps. Dirk carved hooks from old copper wire. They caught a tuna longer than Theon was tall. They feasted, then dried the rest in salt and solar netting. The Driftborn, for the first time, felt alive, not just a ship, but a home. And at night, as they huddled under blankets and rags, Theon would whisper stories of dry land, not as fantasy, as fact. One morning, Theon unrolled a new sketch. It wasn't a map, not in the traditional sense. No lines, no grids, no coordinates, just impressions. Shapes, patterns, something deep in his dreams that whispered like a tide in reverse. Ayla stared at it and saw something Dirk didn't. "Those aren't just dreams," she whispered. "That's elevation." Summer leaned over her shoulder. "How can he know this?" Theon shrugged. "I don't. I just feel it." Dirk narrowed his eyes. "Feeling isn't fact." "No," Ayla said, "but sometimes it's all we've got." They spotted the silhouette at dusk, a fast-moving dot on the horizon, heading east. Dirk tensed. Could be a trader, could be a scout. Summer checked the binoculars. It's too narrow for a colony ship, not wide enough for a mariner crew. Ayla was already rigging the sails. "Run?" Dirk nodded. "Always." The Driftborn turned. She didn't just sail, she flew, slicing through chop like a manta on fire. Within hours, the blip was gone, but the message was clear. Wild Bill was hunting. That night, as the others slept, Summer joined Dirk at the helm. She handed him a cup of warm kelp tea. He didn't thank her, but he drank it. They sat in silence for a long time. "I used to be married," Summer said eventually. Dirk didn't respond. He died in a raid. Before Theon could walk, I thought I'd stop feeling anything after that, but here I am, terrified all over again. Dirk's voice was low. "Feeling keeps you alive, does it?" He turned. His gaze was heavy but not cruel. "Yes," she smiled. "So does staring." "What?" "You stare a lot at me, at Ayla." "At the sky." "I don't stare," he said flatly. "You do," she said, teasing. "And that's okay." She leaned closer, just a little. Dirk didn't pull away. The next morning, Ayla took Summer aside during fish gutting. "You like him," she said casually. Summer snorted. "He's barely civil," Ayla smirked. "Yeah, that's his love language." Summer blinked. "You're not..." Ayla laughed. "Gods, no. That'd be like dating a door." They shared a laugh. It felt good. Too good. Theon peeked in. "You two done talking about how weird Dirk is?" "Yes," Ayla said. "Now we're talking about how weird you are." That night, the clouds parted. The moon rose fat and golden. The ocean reflected it in liquid gold. And then, a shadow, far off. Not a ship, not a whale, land, or something like it. Dirk checked the scope. "It's real. It's big." But Summer frowned. "It's wrong." Theon tugged her sleeve. "It's where we're supposed to go." They didn't anchor, didn't argue, just sailed toward the dark ridge, toward the truth. Chapter 8. The Teeth of the Sea. Southwest of the graveyard line, 1 week later. The water changed first, darker, colder, too still. Dirk didn't like it. Neither did the seabirds because there weren't any. Ayla swam deep and came back shaken. "It's not just a trench," she said. "It's a grave." This was the graveyard line, where ancient cities had sunk whole, skyscrapers standing like black teeth in the abyss, barnacled and half-eaten by time. No colony ships drifted here, no mariners dared. It was, as the elders said, a place the world forgot, because it wanted to. They found the first one floating belly up, a metallic sphere, faded red, with faded markings and a jagged metal spine, an old sea mine from the final days of World War III. Dirk recognized it instantly. "Drop the sail," he snapped. Now, no sound, no wake. The Driftborn crept forward under whisper paddles Ayla deployed from the starboard rack. Summer sat beside Theon, covering his ears, not from noise, but from tension. The boy didn't move, just stared out at the slow-motion horror drifting past them. 20 mines, then 50, some bobbing, some sunken, chained, all deadly. Ayla dove again, charting their spacing, mapping a path, whispering directions when she surfaced. Left, left, stop. Mine below, they moved like thieves through a sleeping god's vault, and made it out, barely. It jutted from the sea like a toothpick in a corpse's grin. Half submerged, split down the center, covered in coral and kelp. They anchored nearby. Dirk didn't like it. But Theon pointed. "That window, see it? There's still glass. That means dry chambers." Ayla was already rigging her dive harness. "Let's find out." Dirk scowled. "You're not going alone." "I wasn't planning to," she grinned. "You're coming with me." The two of them slipped beneath the surface like shadows, through broken windows, up submerged stairwells, past tangled wires and flickering signs that hadn't blinked in 500 years. They entered what used to be a boardroom. One sealed door had held. Inside was air, musty, thin, but breathable, and on the table, cans of food, stacks of paper, a black crate full of dirt, and a functioning wall map with blinking red lights. "Military," Dirk whispered. "Pre-melt evac zone. Coordinates still good." Ayla touched the red light glowing near the upper edge of the map. "Elevation 7,000 feet, she read. They looked at each other. Neither said it, but both thought it. Dry land. They surfaced to smoke on the horizon. Dirk swore. Buccaneers. Summer had already pulled anchor. Theon was loading the harpoons. They came from the northeast. They tracked us. Ayla climbed aboard and pointed. "Full sail." "Wind's west. They'll chase," Summer said. "They always do," Dirk answered. The Driftborn flew, wind screaming, waves breaking, harpoons locked and loaded. Ayla steered while Dirk read wind gusts and reef shadows like a prophet. The Buccaneers followed, solar power fading, engines whining, pedal pit creaking under the weight of fury and rust. Scarjack barked orders. "Range! Fire!" Explosive spears soared past the Driftborn, missing by yards. One clipped the rear sail. A fire broke out. Theon was already smothering it with tarp. Then Dirk yelled, "Reef ahead!" It wasn't a warning. It was a plan. The Driftborn darted into a shallows patch, spiked with coral, metal skeletons, and jagged wind-torn debris, too dangerous for big ships. Perfect for them. Ayla guided them like a needle through fabric. Dirk dropped small explosive charges behind them. When the devil's grin hit the edge of the reef, it snagged. The hull groaned, the pit stuttered, and then, boom, a mine, old, rusty, live. It tore the Buccaneers' lower stern open like a metal mouth, flames screaming, silhouettes in chaos. That night, anchored in silence, the stars above them burned brighter than fire. Dirk stood alone at the helm. Summer approached quietly. "You saved us." "No. We were just faster." She stepped closer. "You always say that everything is just timing, just tactics. Like you're not part of it. I don't care about..." But she kissed him. Not hard, not rushed, just real. His hand didn't flinch. It found her waist. Ayla watched from the shadows, smiling quietly. Theon snored on a crate beside her. Later, as the fire died down, Theon opened his eyes. "Did we win?" Ayla tousled his hair. "Not yet. But we're close." He looked west, where the map had pointed. "Is it there?" She looked too. "I think so." Then she said it again, louder. "I know so." Chapter 9. Last Breath of the Buccaneers. Western Driftline, 19 days after Smith Colony. The sea had gone quiet again, too quiet. Ayla didn't like it. Dirk liked it even less. Summer sat in the garden pit, trying to coax sprouts from a lemon tree that hadn't bloomed in years. Theon sat nearby, chewing dried fish, flipping through his drawings like pages of prophecy, and above them all, the Driftborn moved slowly, wounded but not broken. The wind was light, the sails full. And somewhere behind them, death still followed, because the Buccaneers weren't done. Not yet. They spotted it on the third day, a dark smear on the horizon, trailing smoke, limping westward like a wounded beast. The Devil's Grin was still afloat, damaged, slowed, but alive. Scarjack was at the helm now, half burned, half mad. Wild Bill hadn't been seen since the reef. Some said he died, some said he changed. Rumor was he'd locked himself in the hull with a map, a bottle of fuel, and the heads of 3 failed scouts. Either way, they were still coming. They'll catch us, Dirk said. Not if we keep moving, Ayla countered. They'll keep chasing, Summer added, forever, until they take Theon, or kill all of us. Silence. Then Dirk said the thing no one wanted to say. Then we end it. It wasn't a battle plan. It was a trap, a last gambit. They used the reef again, the shallows, the mines, the chaos. But this time they added something else, bait. The Driftborn sailed openly, sails bright, wind perfect, leaving a trail of scent markers and scrap to lure the Devil's Grin into the kill zone. Meanwhile, Dirk and Ayla swam out, underwater, silent. Each carried charges, mined from old torpedoes, pressurized and rigged with salt fuses. Theon and Summer remained on the boat. Theon handled the sail. Summer manned the harpoons. It was their first time apart since the escape, and maybe the last. The Buccaneers came fast, engines screaming, pitmen pedaling like demons, Scarjack at the prow with a flamethrower duct taped to a rebar pole. Burn them! But the Driftborn veered, then slowed, then stopped. Scarjack grinned. They're out of tricks. Then the sea exploded. From below, twin detonations ripped the Devil's Grin open like a tin can struck by lightning. The lower decks filled with fire. The pit screamed. Masts buckled. Men leapt into the sea, some burned, some drowned. Dirk surfaced first, harpoon in hand. Ayla surfaced next, covered in soot and blood. And then Wild Bill rose from the inferno. He wasn't burned. He wasn't screaming. He was smiling. Half his coat was gone, his journal burned, his eyes empty. You can kill the ship, he rasped, but not the fire. He threw a grenade. Ayla ducked. Dirk tackled him into the water. They sank, locked in death's embrace. And then silence. No explosion, just bubbles. Then Dirk rose, gasping. Wild Bill did not. The Devil's Grin burned for 3 days. The ocean turned black with smoke and memory. And finally, it was over. No more chasing, no more fear, only wind. And one direction left to go. A week later, Theon pointed at the horizon. There, a dark line. No clouds, no tricks, land. For hours, no one said anything. Then Summer dropped to her knees and kissed the deck. Ayla cried. Dirk just gripped the tiller tighter. They landed at dusk. The air smelled wrong. Rich, green, alive. Birdsong, trees, mountains, and dirt, real dirt, beneath their feet. Theon took off his boots and ran. Summer followed, laughing. Dirk stood still. Ayla touched his shoulder. We made it. He shook his head. We're not meant to stay. I know, she said. They stayed for 3 days. Built a shelter, collected samples, marked coordinates in stone. And then Summer told Dirk, I'm pregnant. He looked at her, long, silent, then pulled her close. We'll visit, he said. You better. They kissed. And Theon, grinning, carved the words into the stone. Dry land eyes real. Dirk plus Ayla equal to drifters. Summer plus Theon equal to home. They left on the 4th morning. No trumpets, no fanfare, just wind and water. Ayla stood at the helm, Dirk beside her, and the world ahead. Chapter 10. Dirt Between the Toes. Undisclosed coordinates, 6 months later. The story of dry land spread like fire on salt water. It was whispered on the open channels, traded like contraband among colonies, passed from sailor to child, elder to orphan, mariner to mariner. They called it a miracle. They called it a lie. They called it hope. But only 4 people in the world had stood on that shore. Only 4 had left footprints. and only 2 were ever going back. The Driftborn sliced across the open water once more, her sails now reinforced with canvas from the great wheel, her hulls repainted with sea-worn art. A new mast stood tall, a symbol, a wave curled around a mountain peak. At the helm stood Dirk, skin darker, beard thicker, eyes a little softer. Beside him, barefoot and sun-kissed, Ayla, hair wind-tangled, laughter easier now, her gills hidden beneath woven beads. They no longer ran. They chose the sea. They were legends now, the drifters, the guild ones, the ghosts who found land and left it behind. Not all stories end in fire. Smith Colony had burned, but the survivors rebuilt, with help, with trade, with trust. Summer led them. Theon became a symbol, the boy who dreamed of land, the child whose drawings proved the myths. He was no longer mocked, he was followed, he kept drawing. Not just land, but ships, people, future. And in Summer's arms, a newborn, a daughter, strong lungs, quiet eyes. She smelled like lemons and salt, Dirk's daughter, named Hugh, after the uncle who gave them the sea. Dirk and Ayla returned every quarter moon, weather permitting. They never stayed long, just enough to leave supplies. Share stories, refill seed stores, kiss Summer, hold Hugh. And once, when Summer begged him to stay, Dirk held her face and said, "This world was made for you. The sea was made for me, but I'll never sail too far." The drifters passed word to the Tri-Ring Coalition, to Meridia Station, to the Great Wheel. At first, no one believed. Then the soil came, then the coordinates. Then the stories. A new class of mariners was born. Seekers, young, wild, fearless. They chased the myth, and sometimes they found it. The world didn't recover, not overnight, but it remembered. And that was the first step. Some say Dirk and Ayla were immortal, that they had webbed hands and could breathe storms, that the Driftborn could outrun lightning. Some said they sank into the deep one day, sailing west into the sun, never to return. Others say they're still out there, just beyond the horizon, waiting for the world to earn its land again. If you ever find yourself on the right mountain, high above the waves, you'll find it. A smooth stone tablet etched by hand. Dry land is real. This is not the end. It's only the shore. The drifters. The Driftborn anchors just offshore. Dirk wades knee-deep into the surf, holding a baby girl against his chest. Summer waits on the beach. Theon, taller now, waves from a garden thick with green. Ayla watches from the deck, smiling. Dirk walks up, no words, just hands the baby to her mother and wraps them both in his arms. Then he steps back, looks down at the sand. He wiggles his toes into the dirt. For a moment, just a moment, he closes his eyes. Then he turns back to the sea. The end. Author's note. This story started as a wave, just a ripple of an idea. But it grew and swelled and crashed onto the page with all the grit and salt I could give it. The Ocean Colonies is a tribute to the dreamers, the drifters, and the ones who refuse to sink, no matter how deep the world goes. To those still chasing dry land, keep paddling. Brian M. Brumbaugh. Thank you for listening and watching. Please like, share, and comment. And as always, please subscribe if you would like more stories.